Could we talk a little bit about materials, because that's obviously been one of the Wilson signature traits, and what led you to experiment with different materials rather than the 80% or 90% of manufacturers who use MDF, as an example?
Yeah. Yeah, well, the first actual hardbound book on audio that I read was in 1959, and it was by Gilbert A. Briggs of Worthdale Wireless Works. And it was a very entertaining and educational book. He really wrote so that people could understand these principles. And he talked about cabinet panel resonances, and one of the approaches that he pioneered was to on the baffle to have an outer surface, which could have been made out of plywood, and then a gap, and then an inner surface made out of the same material, and then filling the space between them with sand, the sand-filled baffle.
Yeah.
And I remember in the early 60s, the Wharfdale Model 60 was quite popular in the United States.
Right.
And he also had an illustration of a speaker that fit into the corner that was made out of cinder blocks. And that too was quite non-resonant. Right. And so it got me thinking at a rather young age about the importance of panel resonances. And I even made a speaker system once out of a stack of old tires because they, rubber, it doesn't have much resonance to it. Of course, it also had no dynamics. Right. It was physically very unstable.
Right.
But when you're young, you try things. Getting now to seriously looking at cabinets, it's astounding how much acoustical output will result from relatively small displacements in a large area, like the side panel of an enclosure. So when we're designing serious loudspeakers, we have to keep in mind that even minuscule movement, displacement of large area panels, which could be even the side panel of a small monitor, mini monitor speaker, can result in audible coloration of the sound. So we want the enclosure material to be extremely rigid, and we also want it to have internal damping, a lot of internal damping. Now, in addition to the internal damping of the material, we of course also, like other serious manufacturers, have various forms of bracing to reduce the displacement still more and to push the resonant frequencies higher in that way. So we have looked at a variety of materials: metal, plastics, woods, composite materials, and we've generally found the best balance of characteristics in combination resins and ceramic or other mineral materials. And so our X material and S materials that we work with primarily now, and I think you saw quite a bit of that in the shop, they're made for us according to our specifications by our vendor in the United States. They're not made in China or anything like that. And but we do have a continuing project on materials going on. And it's not just the acoustical properties, it's the mechanical properties. They have to, be, the adhesives have to work very well with them. They have to accept the primer and the gel coat and the paint and so forth. All the processing that we do, they have to be thermally stable. And we test them in a chamber that cycles the heat and humidity for them. So I suppose any I don't frankly have any prejudice for one material over another, other than it has to meet our requirements. One of the requirements is it has to have a correct mechanical impedance match for the driver frames.
Right.
And some of the materials which look very good on paper are not particularly good in that regard,
Okay.
including one of ours. X material is not particularly good in the mid-range in that regard,
Right.
which is why we have a different material which is part of our M series for mid-range.
Mid-range. Yeah. Okay. What do you see as the benefits or maybe disadvantages of powered or active speakers, and have you ever thought of releasing an active speaker?
I see practically nothing but downside to them. I know that it's the kind of a concept that fits neatly into some academic construct which looks so good on paper. You should be able to optimize this amplifier for the characteristics of the speaker, and if you could mount it in the speaker, then you don't have all that expensive chassis work and so forth. But one of the characteristics about most enthusiast hobbies is that people like to make their own choices. And it would be like, now I'm not a golfer, but I can't help but think that it would be like some golf manufacturer saying, well, you've got to have the ball manufactured by the same company that manufactures the club. Because they know how to match the mechanical impedances of the compliance of the skin of the ball with the, and you could give all kinds of reasons, and yet people, for a variety of reasons, will say, well, but I don't like those balls as well as I like these others.
Sure.
Musicians, string players, they very, very often will pick bows, from different,
Sure.
different builders than their instruments. With cars, I mean, it's just, whenever there is a passionate hobby that has a large element of emotional involvement, you're going to find that people want to reflect their own ideas. So if we were to come out with a speaker the size of the Sasha and it had its own built-in amplifier, the people that love single-ended triode amplifiers, we've just excluded that entire market segment.
Mm-hmm.
The people that love vacuum tube amplifiers, I mean, unless this amplifier is a vacuum tube amplifier built in, which makes no sense whatsoever,
Right.
we've excluded all the vacuum tube amplifiers.
Sure.
And then people who say, well, it's got to be Class A bias,
Yeah.
and so you just go through excluding one market segment after another, and the neat little theory that would hold up in a classroom about the benefits rings hollow.
Sure.
In the marketplace and in the passions of the people that would buy the product. And I know that for different rooms and different systems, I like different amplifiers.
Now, okay, having said that, has Wilson ever toyed with the idea of designing a Wilson audio amplifier to go along with the speakers?
I think I issued a request to my people that if I ever came up with that idea, they were to put me in a straitjacket and immediately haul me off to an institution. We don't have a passion for amplifiers like we do speakers, number one. Number two, it's a reality that if, like for example today, if let's say that you're audio research and one of your dealers is saying, oh, I'm looking at top end loudspeakers, and I'm looking at this brand and Wilson Audio. Well, audio research first of all, they use our speakers, so they know our speakers, and we've had a great relationship with them for decades. But they also know that we're not going to be going into their dealer and trying to sell our amplifier
Sure.
to them. So from an emotional standpoint, it makes no sense. From the standpoint of service, it makes no sense. Our speakers are extraordinarily reliable, even among loudspeakers.
Yeah.
And if something does go pop, it's almost always a resistor which can be replaced without even a soldering iron.
Yeah.
It's very easy
Yeah.
to do, whereas amplifiers are a whole different story. And amplifiers, you know, you'd look at it and say, well, they're almost perfect. They have flat frequency response and all that, and yet they become obsolete. You see, you know, this passing parade of amplifier designs, and
Exactly.
you know.
Yeah. Sure.
So I have no interest in getting on that treadmill.